Hola amigos, bien o no. Saludos otra vez desde Medellín. Hoy el tema es cómo utilizar discursos para practicar nuestra pronunciación. Es el tema de hoy. So, hello again from Medellín. Today we're going to talk about how we can use speeches, and particularly the reading of speeches, to help us improve our pronunciation. So the idea really is that we find ourselves a test piece and we look for ideally a speech. We pick a famous speech because with this, even in a fairly short text, when I say short, we mean probably something about 100 odd words thereabouts, or longer if you like. But with that fairly short speech, we get to practice the phonetic sounds, or what's technically known as the phonemes that we have in English. So English has 44 phonemes or word sounds. These are kind of like the a, b, m, f, r kind of sounds that are very important for us to sound fluid. So what we do is we find a speech that we can then be very familiar with the content of that speech. And our idea is to practice it and be very conscious of how we sound while we're doing it. So ideally record yourself doing the speech. We're looking to get to a point where we can speak with good tone and expression. And this is something we can keep going back to because it would be like a set text that we use as a test piece, something we know how we sound when we do this. And it's very helpful because it'll help you warm the voice up, perhaps on a day when perhaps you haven't been using English for a while and you need to get back into that. And it's a way to look at how you're improving your pronunciation. And also it's a way to be conscious of how we can add a bit more drama, a bit more expression, a bit more emotion into how we sound. Because what we don't want is for us to come out with a sort of like a very sort of flat, robot-like voice. So speeches are a good way of practicing that. And to help with this today, I'm going to pick a piece of a speech. Actually, it's a classic, really. It's back originally from 431 BC, so we're going back 2,000 plus years. We could say, really, the father of Athenian democracy, a gentleman called Pericles, made a very famous speech, otherwise known as the funeral oration, which he gave after a war between Athens and Sparta. And in this speech, he's talking about the Athenians who died defending Athens against Spartan aggression, famously at the Battle of Marathon. So I'm going to read you a piece from the speech. And just in this paragraph, we're going to see an awful lot of really sort of the useful sounds we get in English. And this is just to show you, hopefully, how we can, say, get some expression and emotion into our voice and generally improve our fluency. Yeah? So let's have a look. So this is from Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War. Pericles' funeral oration. Let me say that our system of government does not copy the institutions of our neighbours. It is more the case of our being a model to others than of our imitating anyone else. Our constitution is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority, but of the whole people. When it is a question of settling private disputes, everyone is equal before the law. When it is a question of putting one person before another in positions of public responsibility, what counts is not membership of a particular class, but the actual ability which the man possesses. No one, so long as he has it in him to be of service to the state, is kept in political obscurity because of poverty. And just as our political life is free and open, so is our day-to-day life in our relations with each other. We do not get into a state with our next-door neighbour if he enjoys himself in his own way, nor do we give him the kind of black looks which, although they do no real harm, still do hurt people's feelings. We are free and tolerant in our private lives, but in public affairs we keep to the law. This is because it commands our deep respect. Now that's just an extract from the full funeral, which actually runs to about 3 or 4 pages. But you get the idea. Just in that short piece, that's probably close to about 100 words, we're using most of the phonemic sounds. So hopefully you could see in my reading there, gives you a chance to be a bit more expressive, use some emotion in what you're saying. This is just an extract of what I was reading. I don't have space on the board to put the rest up. Let me show you a way not to do it, just by way of contrast. Let me say that our system of government does not copy the institutions of our neighbours. It is more the case of being a model to others than of our imitating anyone else. Our constitution is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority but of the whole people. Okay, so sadly, lots of people sound like that when they read things. Because they're reading the words, but there's no emotion, there's no connection with the text, there's no sense of feeling, so it's really flat and frankly quite boring. So we have to look at a different way of doing it, and this is why we have to understand the text. If we need be, we have to go back through it and really make sure we've, in some cases perhaps translate a bit of it to make sure we really understand the full nuance, the meaning behind what the author's trying to say, and then use the punctuation that we see as a clue to help us with when we pause, what words we can emphasize, and particularly to help us with our breathing. Now this again is key to having a fluid sound, and this is why reading aloud speeches really helps, because they were always written to be said aloud. So let's show you this little piece again, but with a bit more emotion. Let me say that our system of government does not copy the institutions of our neighbours. It is more the case of our being a model to others than of our imitating anyone else. Our constitution is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority but of the whole people. So there. I hope you can see a bit of the difference in that. So I'd encourage you really, go ahead, find yourself a test piece. There are lots of different speeches by different people. You don't have to go back as far as 431 BC, surely. Other really good examples of this, I can think of maybe John F. Kennedy's inaugural speech, excellent. Dr. Martin Luther King, his famous I Have a Dream speech, another tremendous example of oratory, lots of emotion in that. Pick something like that, you have lots of choice, something with you on your taste. And I say you don't necessarily need to do the whole thing, you could just pick a chunk of the speech, but practice it so you can do it with flair, with expression, with emotion, and then you can use this kind of to tune your voice, get a good sense of how you sound. You don't have to copy their accent, it's not like an impersonation, but you should get some sense of the flow of the speech, where you can put the stress on the words to get the best result, so that your sound, when you do the speech, you're going to sound natural, fluent, and with a nice connection to your audience. And you can carry this over into all the other spheres where you use your voice. So if you're working on the telephone generally, you don't have to clearly repeat the speech, but once you get a sense of how you can control your voice and get that level of expression, you can use that in all the other ways you need perhaps in your job. So that's our tip for today. Have a go. Déjame saber en los comentarios which speech you end up using. And for now, at least, from Medellin, it's cheerio.